Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. I'm just pulling my chair in just a wee bit, give my back a wee bit more support, because I've figured out that on Wednesday my back was getting very sore, so I need to address that. Anyway, welcome, everybody. Hope you've all had a great weekend so far. It's been a good one for me and my family. We've had a very, very chilled out, relaxed time. It's been very, very good. Weather, less said about the weather, the better. Summer basically still has not arrived. We are on the 8th, or at least here in the UK, we're on the 8th of July. And let's just say summer still has not arrived in Scotland. So I don't know where summer has got to. Part of me thinks maybe it's still stuck somewhere between here and Australia, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. No summer so far. So hopefully it'll turn up eventually, I hope. Anyway, yeah, I hope everyone's had a great weekend and a great end to your week. Tonight we are taking more of your Studio One questions as we head into the summertime. Now, I'm aware as we head into the summertime, we tend to lose a few people, a few of our regular viewers, because you guys go on vacation and that's all fine. That's all great. And I am hoping to be able to do the same as well this summer. To be able to get away for a week would be awesome. Just getting a notification. So I totally get that you guys need to, go and take vacations and stuff like that. But the idea is to keep your Studio One questions coming, and you can either post them in the chat or you can email them to me. Like, I'm aware that in the chat there is a limit on the number of characters you can type, especially as I always ask you to type at Jonny Lipsham Studios to start with, because that highlights my name in red, and it helps me pick out questions from the general chat, you guys talking amongst yourselves, which is great. I love it when you guys talk amongst yourselves, and I think it's time some of these just got muted because it's getting very irritating. So I'm going to mute some of those notifications. Anyway, so I'm aware that removes some of your 160 characters. So if you would prefer to email the question to me, then please just say question emailed. That's cool. I will check my email, and you get much more. Space, obviously, because there's no character limit in an email. So just head to the web address below. Now, it's not a link, but you know what you need to type into your URL of a tab in your favorite browser of choice, be that Chrome, Opera, Edge, or whatever it is you prefer to use, like DuckDuckGo is a particularly good browser, I have heard. So yeah, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Go there, hit the contact us form, and set your subject as Sunday Night Live, and I will get to your question. So if you prefer to do it that way, rather than the more traditional putting your question in the chat, then we can do either. I'm really happy with you doing either. I'm looking at also some other ways in which we can field questions as well, other than just the chat or email. I'm looking at some other ways to make that possible as well, so that we've got different ways available, and preferably ways that don't have a character limit like you have in the chat in YouTube. It'd be great if we could have more space available, but it would make the chat very kind of cluttered. So there are pros and cons to basically getting YouTube to increase the number of characters for a comment in the chat. So who knows? whether they'll expand it or not, I don't know. So if you have a question about Studio One usage, or you have a particular problem that you're facing in Studio One, or you want to ask about particular features that are already in Studio One, then you can ask those questions as well. Or if you're brand new to Studio One, you don't really know kind of where to start particularly, then please do get those in as well. So okay, let's get started. Let's get questions in because Simog Eng, mixing mastering engineer, has a question already, and he says, if for the future I consider Studio One 6 or even 7, considering I don't use Atmos, won't use Atmos, and don't use Pro Page so much, the project page so much, is it okay to Pro Mix and even master? Yes, you can. You certainly can. Now, sorry about that. I don't know what that. Oh, great. I think one of my teeth has just started to crumble. I'm gonna have to deal with that after the show. Great. That means a dentist appointment. Marvelous. So yes, you can use the artist page to do any mixing, any mastering of a professional level. Okay? Now, here is one of the caveats, however. If you're mastering an album, then there are limitations to what you can do with Studio One Artist. Compared to the professional version with the professional edition with the project page. There are features in the project page that allow you to enter metadata for each song. You're not going to have that in the song page. It just doesn't exist because the song page is designed for a single song. Does this mean that you can't sequence your songs in order? Yes, you can. You can still do that. However, you will only be able to have the metadata for one song because the whole point of the project page is to be able to do mastering and sequencing and metadata for each song. So there are pros and cons. It's possible to do mixing in the song page, obviously, because that's where mixing is done. So if you're using Studio One Artist and you want to do mixing, then the artist version can do it totally. Especially now in Studio One, since Studio One 5, we opened up the possibility of using third-party plugins. So you can totally go to town and mix using your favorite third-party plugins from your favorite third-party manufacturer in Studio One Artist without any problems at all. And you can get a very solid, very good quality, very good standard mix. However, like I said, without the project page, you're not going to be able to do metadata for each song in particular. And there are some other features in the project page that are unique that make mastering actually really, really easy. Other than the idea of the project page is to be able to create a link between the song and the mastering project so that, let's say you are in the midst of mastering an album for a client and you've got 10 songs, you've mixed all 10 songs, and you've sent all 10 songs to a new project. They're all loaded in there. And as you're mastering, you're on song number 4. And as you're doing some EQ, some compression, a little bit of saturation, a little bit of limiting, and all those kind of things that you might do in mastering, you suddenly find that one of the rhythm guitar parts is just poking through too much. You could use a little bit of multiband compression to help with that. But multiband compression is going to affect the whole mix. So what you suppress or compress in a particular frequency band is going to be across the whole mix. So yes, it might help bring down that rhythm guitar part, but also it's going to affect, say, the frequency range of the solo lead guitar and maybe a saxophone and maybe the upper, the upper chord voicings of a keyboard part. And that might be something, that might be a compromise that you're not willing to make. So here is a case where that unique symbiotic link between the song and the project page comes in handy, because what you can do now is you can click that little red wrench next to the song in the project page, and then what that does is that loads the song back into the song page in Studio One, and you can go, I'm just going to turn down that guitar by a couple of dB, and I'll maybe look at, maybe there is a frequency in that guitar that is popping through that I didn't really hear when I was mixing it, but now I'm mastering it, I'm hearing that frequency pop through. So then you'd go back, you'd adjust that frequency with a little bit of EQ, and you'd maybe turn it down just a little bit, and then you save the song, and then you update the mastering file and go back to the project page, and you can just totally carry on from where you left off. You can't really do that just by doing mastering in the song page, because if you're mastering a stereo mix in the song page, as you're working on it, you hear the same thing. What you now have to do is you have to throw away that particular version of the song. You then have to reload the song, make the adjustment, save it, do a fresh export, and then bring that stereo file into your song page that you're using for mastering. And that's like several steps. Whereas having this symbiotic link between the song page and the project page means all of those extra steps are eliminated. It's just a case of go make the adjustment, save the song, update the mastering file, done. And you can just reopen the project page, and there it is. It's you've got the new adjusted version of the song in the project, and then you can save the project, and all of it is then much better in balance. So I hope that kind of helps explain the pros and the cons. Now, I'm not sorry, I have something in my left nostril which is going to make me want to sneeze, but I'm resisting because I don't want to sneeze right now. So I hope that kind of explains some of the pros and some of the cons of mastering in the artist version as opposed to using the project page in the professional edition of Studio One. I think the project page is immensely powerful, and in fact, it's one of the things that actually drew me to Studio One, was the fact that no longer do I need to have Cubase and Wavelab, which is what I had been doing for mixing mastering. For years, I did that. I used Cubase, and then I used Wavelab for doing all the mastering. And yes, I still had to, if something did pop up in the mastering that was in the mix that I didn't like, and I knew that would require me adjusting the mix, yes, I did have to toss that version of the song, reload the song in Cubase, and then fix, and then re-export, and then re-upload into Wavelab. It was a pain in the arse, literally. Well, not literally, because I was not sitting on the song, but you know what I mean. It was totally a pain to have to go through that process. And then when I discovered that Studio One had this built-in project page designed for mastering that allowed me to basically do this kind of like to and fro between the song and the project, and then just update the file, which was really quick. I was just like, wow, this is a fantastic solution. This is a really, really great solution that makes mixing and mastering, for me personally, much more of a symbiotic process when I'm working on something for a client or something. Because now I'm able to do everything inside the same program. So I can, if I'm working with an artist from start to finish, then I can record, mix, and master, and then, potentially set up a show for that person to go and, perform with. with backing tracks and whatever they need, all from the same program. So it's insane, basically. Let's see. Rich Cresswell says, how about a Discord live chat only for questions? That's a great idea. That is a great idea. I like that. I will definitely think about that, and I might consider creating, because I do have a Discord. It's a little bit semi-private, but it's not tremendously private. But I might consider opening up a channel on that Discord that is more public, and then make some of my other channels on that Discord server private, so that I have a little private community and a little public community where if you want to ask questions in Discord, you can do that there. That's actually not a bad idea. Excuse my snort. That was necessary. Simog says, I think because I own Studio One 4 Professional, so would use for metadata and organizing tracks, the rest all on Artist version 6 or 7. You could do it that way if you wish. However, the other caveat, because you have version 4 Professional, version 4 is no longer a supported product. Which basically means, unless you're using the last version of version 4, which I think is 4.6.2, it may not activate online anymore. You may have to do an offline activation for Studio One version 4. And that would be the same for if you're using version 1, version 2, or version 3, as well as version 4. You will likely have to do an offline activation to use Studio One 4. It will still work, but if you encounter problems with it, there is no technical support available for those older versions of Studio One. Persona's technical support only support the two most current versions of Studio One. So currently that is Studio One 5 and Studio One 6. That will obviously change in the future as new versions emerge. So, but it's currently version 5 and version 6 that are supported by Persona's technical support. And like I said, there are activation issues that exist for Studio One 4 now. So bear that in mind. I'm not saying don't do it, but just bear that in mind. And what I would say is, why would you want to do the mixing in the artist version and then use the project page in an older version of Studio One Professional? Why not just do everything in the same place if you're going to be using the project page? Kind of, to me, that doesn't really make sense. You're using the artist version for mixing, and then you're going to use an older professional version to use the project page. That kind of doesn't really make sense to me. Why not just use the new version? Why not use Studio One 6 Professional and make use of the project page? Because it's designed specifically for mastering, as I've said. Okay, Al has a question. He says, bit of a technical question. Look out. He says, have Studio One Professional for over a year on Windows 11. Having sort of random problems in song page. Yesterday I was mixing a track and all the meters went blank except the master bus. Closed the session, reopened, and still there. Turned off the computer, came back to session, and all good, but seems weird. Any ideas? If you powered off your computer and started it back up again, it is entirely possible that the situation was caused by perhaps you had your computer open for a very long time. And when I say open, I mean your computer powered up and running. Maybe because I know a lot of people, they never turn off their computers. The problem with never turning off your computer is a lot of data just gets cached and cached and cached and cached. And eventually the cache just gets full. And when the cache gets full, data starts getting screwed up. And it can happen in Studio One. It can happen in a completely other unrelated program. And you start getting weird things happening. Like weird audio things happening, weird graphical glitches happening, all sorts of weird stuff just starts to happen. And then really the only solution is just to, shut your computer completely down, let it go cold, and then power it back up. And what that does is that just clears everything. It clears everything out of RAM. It clears everything out of your cache, clears everything out of the buffers on your computer. And then you're basically starting from fresh. And so that can make things like what you've experienced just go away. Because they're not necessarily actually a problem with the program. It is a problem with your computer going, you know what? I'm just tired, man. You've made me work for all of this time and now I'm just tired. Can I have a rest, please? Computers actually do that. And, you might think it weird that a machine would basically say, I need a rest. But they do. And I know that there are arguments that people make for never turning off their computers. And one of those arguments is they will talk about when you press the power button in to power on your computer, it sends a spike of electricity through the machine. And the more times that happens over time, it can start to mess up the computer. Okay, it's a reasonable argument. But it's not something I would recommend ever. I am one of those people that would recommend shut down your computer regularly. I do that. The longest I've ever left my computer on is 48 hours. And after 48 hours, things just started going a little bit weird. And so I decided, okay, time to shut down. So I shut everything off. I shut down all my hardware gear. I shut down the PC. And I left it for a little while. And I went and had a snack. I went and made a cup of tea. And I came back in and I powered everything up and everything was fine. So, computers need a break as much as a person needs a break. So I think it's in our long-term best interest for our computers to do that, to give our computers a break. I don't necessarily buy that whole thing of, power buttons. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it because otherwise, they would never, if this was a compelling argument, no computers would have a power button on them. If having a power button damages your computer, what's the point of having a power button on? It's a weak point of the system. Get rid of it. Have it so that when you plug the power cable into the back of the computer, it just turns it on and it keeps it on until it dies. But that's why I don't buy that argument, because I don't think it's logical. And it's also incredibly wasteful of resources. You go to bed at night, your computer is still working. Why? It's drawing electricity, it's running up your electricity bill, and it's also environmentally damaging. And it can be more environmentally damaging depending upon which country you live in, because there are some countries where, the national grid is generated by, the burning of fossil fuels to generate electricity. And so if your computer is on all the time, every bit of power adds up. You might think that your computer is not really doing much because, hey, it's just one computer in a whole country of computers. Yeah, but if everybody adopts the same idea of leaving their computer on all the time, that adds up. Rich Cresswell says, it's just a waste, leaving it on. Turn it off when you're done. Absolutely. And that's what I do. And that's what I've always done. And most of my computers have lasted at least 6 years. Knock on wood that this computer continues, because I've had this one for 4 years and it's running pretty well. So you'd better keep running well, Mr. Computer down there. Thank you. You're doing a great job. You will get a treat one day. So, yes, powering off your computer regularly is good practice. Okay, let's go see what else is going on here. Keith from Radio Tuck Frumpet is here. Hello, mate. Good to see you. He says, I left my laptop on for over a month, and last night the screens just went blank. I had to cold reboot. There you go. Eventually, your computer will just hit a wall and say, I need to stop. And so it does. It'll either stop for you, or you're going to have to do something about it. Is Windows 11 any good? Yes, Windows 11 is very good. Windows 11 has been out for a good while now, so any of the initial early problems of its initial release are fixed and gone. And yes, it did not necessarily have the best start in life as an operating system. It had a slightly inauspicious start, shall we say. So, yeah. But it has definitely come of age, and Windows 11 is actually pretty stable, pretty solid. Persona's technical support has, very few issues with Windows 11 and Studio One. So, if you're running Studio One, the one thing I will say, if you're going to upgrade your operating system to Windows 11, and you're running an older version of Studio One, such as Studio One version 3 or Studio One version 4, upgrade. Before you upgrade your operating system, upgrade Studio One. The reason I say that is because those older versions of Studio One were never designed with a new version of Windows in mind. Because it didn't exist. Windows 11 did not exist when version 3 and version 4 were released, and certainly when their last builds were released. So there's no guarantee at all that it will work. Now, there are some systems upon which you might get lucky, and you might be running Studio One version 2 on Windows 11 with no issues. But that is not a blanket thing. You just happen to get lucky, in my opinion. So if you're going to upgrade your operating system to Windows 11, upgrade Studio One, make sure you're running either version 5 or version 6, because both of those were tested before release on Windows 11. So we know that they are good on Windows 11. Let's see. Bobby Booth says he's always turned off his PC every night. Good man. Yes, I totally agree. Peter Burrick says, yes, my PC is off if I'm not using it. Absolutely. I could not agree more. Just Bobby is here. He says, just stopping in, trying to sleep. Hit that like button, folks. We'll watch in the early 4 a.m.-ish whilst waiting for my plane. Awesome. Thank you for stopping by, Bob. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm glad you've encouraged people to hit that like button. We've got 20 people watching, but we've only got 14 likes. You know how I like it, folks. You know I like parity is what I call it, between the number of viewers and number of likes. So if you're here and you're watching and you like what we're talking about, then please hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. Helps me out a lot. Just like if you're watching and you're not subscribed yet, you'll notice you can't enter in the chat. You can't post anything in the chat. It's subscriber mode only. There is a very good reason for that. When I used to have it kind of just wide open for anybody, we got all sorts of, shall we say, unsavory comments and links to stuff. Well, you couldn't post links because you have to be an admin to do that. But people were basically making some very unsavory posts, and we had some very unsavory people here. I was just like, okay, we lock it down to subscribers only. So basically, if you want to ask a question, you need to hit subscribe, wait 2 minutes, and then the chat will open and you can ask your question. Okay, so if you're watching and you're not subscribed yet, but you do have a question, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give it 2 minutes, and you can ask your question. And I would be happy to answer it, for sure. Let's see. Al says, cool, thanks, Jonny. I'd only been on a couple of hours. I work in 4 to 5 hour blocks, turn it off, and have had the computer checked by a pro. He said it is working well. Yeah, I know. But like I said, glitches happen. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a Studio One bug or anything like that. And this is especially true if when you rebooted your computer, the issues all went away. That suggests something just got balked in RAM somewhere, or some cache data just got corrupted somewhere, and it created what you saw. And so rebooting the computer just flushed all of that stuff away. So sometimes that's what you have to do, even if your computer's only been up for a couple of hours. I think that can be an important thing to try as a first thing when you're looking at some weird things happening in Studio One that don't make any sense. The first thing to try is shut your computer completely off, let it go cold, then power it back up, and then see if that issue still occurs with that particular song. And if it does come back in that particular song, then go, okay, the next thing I'm going to try is I'm going to create a new song, and I'm going to try and reproduce that scenario and see if I can reproduce it. If you find that you can reproduce it in a new song, that's the moment where you make a support ticket. And then you give that information to technical support and you say, hey, I tried rebooting my computer. I found that the issue was still there in the affected song. And then I tried it in a new song and I could reproduce it, and the same issue occurred. That's definitely the time for a support ticket. And then technical support can do a deep dive. They can try and work out what's going on. And it could be a third-party plugin is causing the problem. It could be some other thing. It'd be hard for me to say right now, but the support guys are actually pretty good at nailing down issues. And if it means they found a bug, they found a bug. That's fine. They can report that to the developers. Developers can see if they can reproduce it, and if they can, then they can fix it in a future build. That's kind of how it works. Let's see what else we got. Pepper Raptor Music is here. He says, late but here and liked. Thank you. Thank you very much. He says, I'm still unsavory, but at least I'm a subscriber. Yes, you are. And everybody here that is a subscriber, I appreciate you guys more than you could possibly imagine. We got 22 people here. This is really good. And we've got some really good technical questions. So if you have questions like the ones that have been coming so far, please do get them in the chat. Okay? Dwayne is here. Hello, mate. Good to see you. He says, in days gone by, SETI used to use computer idle time. You got bragging rights for having done so many blocks of data. And you remember that? Wow. Yes, that is a long time ago. And I do remember that. I remember having bragging rights for having had my computer on for like 6 months solid. And I think after that, that's when I discovered that was maybe a bad idea. Pamper Out to Music says, many years ago, I ran a dozen 486 machines on Linux that did folding at home, cranked out a lot of projects at the time. Cool. Awesome. Al says, thank you, Jonny. You've put my mind at rest. Can't reproduce it. It's more random, so probably working it too hard. Unusual for me. Thank you for your answer. No problem. I'm very glad to have helped you out there, Al. But if you do see anything else that's kind of a wee bit weird, go through those first kind of initial steps. Reboot the computer. Let it go cold. Power it up again. See if you can see if the what you saw in that particular song is still happening. If it is, try creating a new song. Bring in some test audio files. It doesn't have to be a song. You can just use some loops. Bring them into Studio One and see if you can reproduce the problem. And then you can make a support ticket if you can. And if you can't, you can just chalk it up to something weird. And then you can go, okay, let's close my affected song. And then let's reopen the affected song and see if the issue is still there. If the issue is still there after doing that with that particular affected song, but a new song doesn't reproduce the issue, try opening up another song, another already existing, maybe even a finished song, and see if the same thing happens. If it doesn't, then you can pretty much categorically state that the issue is isolated to this one song. That being the case, if you are using Studio One Professional, at least version 5, if not version 6, there is a very cool solution for you, and I think I've covered this before, and that's the import song data feature. What you can do is you can create a new song, and then you can go back to the affected song, and you can say, so once you've got that affected song open, what you can do is you can go to your new song, and you can go song, import song data, and then if you're on Windows, an Explorer dialog will pop up. If you're on Mac, Finder dialog box will pop up. And what you need to do is navigate to where the affected song is stored, and then you just you click on the executable file that's there, the whatever the song title is, .song. It's an exe, and then what that does is then that opens up another dialog, and you can select all the tracks, all the other stuff that's available to you, things like events, inserts, sends, all the stuff that you want to preserve, and then you can import the data from the affected song into a new song, and then you can test that song to see if the same issue occurs. If it does, then we know that there is some ratty data somewhere in that particular song that's causing the problem. So give those things a try if you see that thing, if you see this particular thing that you talked about happening again. Okay? I like to call that my little lifeboat. That's my little lifeboat procedure. So if you've got a song that is messed up, and maybe even that song won't actually open, basically it just crashes as soon as you open the song, you can use that import song data to basically act as a lifeboat to rescue your song. There is a caveat with this though. Hopefully this will get changed in a future build at some point. I don't know when that's going to be, but hopefully in a future build, they will add the possibility for you to import buses and effects channels. At the moment, buses don't get imported via the song import. So that's a caveat, but there is a workaround. And the workaround for that is you just create automation lanes for your bus channels. And the way you do that, you right click the fader cap for the bus channel and just choose edit automation. And then that creates an automation lane in the arranger view where all the other tracks are. And then when you do the import song data, you will find that those will appear in your track list. And then you can just check all of those off. And then when you import the song data, it will import the buses as well. So that's something to bear in mind. So it's not a completely fail-safe lifeboat thing, but it's pretty good. And I've seen it work for a number of people where they've been able to rescue a song that they just could not open, to a point where, you know, they thought that that song was completely gone and they were going to have to abandon it, and all of that work was lost. And they tried the little lifeboat procedure, and it worked for them. They got that song back to where it should be, and they were able to carry on working with that song. So it's definitely an option to consider, for sure. You guys are chatting to yourselves about really ancient computers, which is cool. I do remember 486 computers. In fact, I think the first computer that I started using for music making would have been the Atari ST 1040E, the 1040 Eagle. That was a great computer. I still have it. I don't have a monitor with which I can use it because, you know, technology has changed. You know, connections between screens and computers have changed such a lot. But I know it does still work. It does power on. So it does work. I just can't see what it's displaying on the screen, which is a shame. I can't get it to work with like a more modern monitor. I just can't get it to work. I would love to be able to get my Atari ST working again, because I made a lot of really, really cool songs using the precursor to Cubase, which was called Pro 24, and that was made by Steinberg. And Pro 24 basically became the backbone of what would become Cubase, because Pro 24 was pretty much exclusively MIDI only, and then the very first version of Cubase came out, which was still MIDI, and I don't think it was until version 3 that they started adding the ability to record audio. You basically had this dongle that you had to stuff onto the side of your Atari ST, and that was your audio interface with the Atari ST. And you basically connected a microphone to that, or in my case, I connected a mixer to the interface, and it worked really well. And I made a good few records using that. But the way I used to use the Atari ST was I worked in combination with analog gear. So I had an analog mixer, and I had a tape machine. I had a 16-track tape machine. And basically, I worked with those two things. And then with the Atari ST, I would do things in MIDI in the Atari ST, and then I would bounce those down to a stereo track on the tape machine. And then I would overdub audio on top of that. And I did a lot of records that way until I think 2003. I don't recall if the Intel i3 was out in 2003. I can't remember what the computer was then. It might have been the 486. I can't remember. But that's kind of what I did. And by the time the PCs, the good PCs came along, I was using Cubase on PC, and I was exclusively recording inside a computer. I got rid of pretty much all of my analog gear, apart from the tape machine. I kept the tape machine because I liked to do all of my work inside a Cubase, and then basically real-time print it to tape, and then master it from the tape machine, because I like the sound of the tape machine. And so that's kind of what I did, and I did that for a number of years until I moved back to Scotland in 2006, and I had to get rid of the tape machine. There was no way that was coming up to Scotland with me. So so there we go. That's kind of my history with computers and making music on computers. So yeah, how the times have changed. Bobby Biz says, may have to shut down, starting to get the outer bands of the hurricane. Yes, Hurricane Beryl is set to make land. I think it's set to make land in Texas somewhere. I think. Yeah, I'm looking to see where it is. I don't know that part of the United States very well. But it's, I think I would describe this as a very dangerous situation. So if you are in the path or the projected path, if you're in the path right now, I would say evacuate, get yourself out of there, board up your windows, get yourself out of there right now. If you are in the projected path of the hurricane, then I would say start boarding up, start packing up, start thinking about getting out of there, because it's a very dangerous situation. Dwayne says, don't throw the Atari away. I will not be doing that, that's for sure, because that thing is a part of my music history, for sure. You can convert its video out to match today's monitor. Dwayne, you're going to have to furnish me with some instructions on how to do that and what I need to be able to do that. If you could, I'd appreciate that. Al says, thank you for the lifeboat. Music question. Yeah, music questions are for the Songwriting Simplified show on Wednesday. So if you could hold your songwriting questions or your music theory questions until then, I would appreciate it. So if you're available, Al, on Wednesday at the same time, I do my songwriting show then. And part of that show, it's not just about songwriting, it's also about composing and arranging and music theory. So if I can see your question is kind of to do with that. So we can cover that then. If you are not available, if you're not going to be around, that's fine. Just email me that question. Go to my website down the bottom there, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Hit the contact us menu item, and then fill that out and say my songwriting simplified question as the subject, and then post your question there. I will answer it on Wednesday, and you can catch the replay and you will get the answer then. I hope that is a good fit for you. Because I like to try and keep the two shows as separate as I can. Studio One, kind of technical questions on Sundays, and then we do songwriting and music theory and composing and arranging and stuff like that on the Wednesday. I like to try and keep the two things separately. Dwayne says, let's talk about it on the after show Zoom. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to attend the after show Zoom tonight. But please do drop me a message, Dwayne. I'd appreciate that. Billy says it's going to be a Category 1 landfall late tonight near Galveston Bay, south of Houston. Big rainmaker. Yes, and there is also tornado potential. So if you're in that neighborhood, get yourselves out of there. Get yourselves into your basement. Do whatever you need to do to get out of the way of this thing, because it's got considerable destructive potential and can certainly be a life-threatening situation. So if you're in that area, please get yourself out of the path and do whatever you need to protect your property, but get yourself out of the path for your own safety. All right, so there is a Studio One meetup after this show, which is hosted by Billy Morgan, and that starts immediately. So that starts in the next 10 minutes. And in fact, if there are no more questions, I will finish this show early tonight so that you guys can go and have a pee, get a coffee, do whatever you need to do, so you can be ready for the Studio One meetup hosted by Billy, providing his power holds up, which it may or may not do, considering the fact that this hurricane is gonna hit close to where he is. So Let me go and check email and see if I have any emailed questions, and I'm currently not seeing any. Nope, I'm not seeing any right now. So we can finish a few minutes early. I'm happy to do that. If folks want to go and get cups of tea, coffee, and whatever, and go for a pee, use the bathroom before the Studio One meetup, the link to the Studio One meetup is in the chat. Billy Morgan has posted of it. He says he's good here, way west of me. Good for you, Billy. Good for you, mate. I hope it passes by you and doesn't come anywhere near you. So if you guys want to go and get yourselves organized for the Studio One meetup that will be hosted by Billy, please do. That would be cool. But other than that, I'm not seeing any other questions. So I think we will call it a night there. We've got 17 people here still, and we peaked at 21, which is a little bit lower than what we would normally do on a Sunday. We'd normally be, up maybe 35 or so. So we're a wee bit lower, but hey, summer holidays, all that, I totally get it. All right, so if you want to get involved in the Studio One meetup, then please follow the link that Billy has posted. Remind me what the Atari model is. It's the 1040E, the 1040 Eagle. Like I said, I still have it. It's in a box somewhere, possibly in the garage, which may or may not be good for it. But I still do have it, and I hope it still works. Certainly before we moved in here, it did still work. So, yeah, that's what I have, the 1040 Eagle. All right, we'll call it there, folks. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. And I will see you all on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. If you're in the path of Hurricane Beryl, please stay safe. And please take care of yourselves. And look after your neighbors and your friends and your local communities as well. And I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified, where we will be starting the show with Owl's question. So Owl, please email me that question, and we will start with your question first, and we'll kick it off from there. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night. See you Wednesday. Good night.